Soul Simmers, and welcome to episode number 12 of the Builders Bootcamp. Today we're going to be diving into the terrain tool. And the terrain tool is quite the difficult tool in The Sims. I don't want to scare you away all the way in the beginning of the episode, but I do want to make sure that I mention that this might be a little bit of a longer episode because there's quite a lot to unravel. And also, I am not the biggest expert on the terrain tool. I know how to use it, I have been using it in my builds quite often, but I just want to make sure that if I say something that is incorrect, or if I forget something, please forgive me because this is like not my strongest part of building in The Sims. I did want to share all of my tips with you guys, however, because I noticed that when I'm streaming on Twitch, by the way, if you want to follow me over there, I stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, link will be in the description box. But I noticed that when I stream on Twitch, I get a lot of questions about what I'm doing with the terrain tool, how it works, etc, etc. So I did want to make an episode on it, but please forgive me if it's not going to be the most perfect episode in the series, because I still have a lot to learn about the terrain tool as well. So if you guys have any tips or suggestions, please leave them in the comments, because I love the idea that we can learn from each other and I'm not just sending information your way. With that being said, let's get right into the video. So the first tip that I want to share with you guys on the terrain tool is something that doesn't only apply to the terrain tool, and that is enabling and disabling the grid. As you can see right now, I'm in build mode, but I don't have the grid or like the little white squares on my floor. This is because I disable it, but sometimes when you want to build something and you want to make sure everything is aligned perfectly, or when you are using the terrain tool, it is very, very handy to actually have the grid enabled. It's very easy to do this. You just press G on your keyboard. It should be enabled by default, so usually when you open your game or your open build by mode, it's often there already, but this way you can also disable it by pressing G again. So this is also very nice when you want to take like screenshots, but the grid is enabled. You can just press G, it will disable the grid and it will make your screenshots look better as well. But for this episode, we're definitely going to be enabling the grid because it will help us a lot in the terrain tool and seeing which areas are flat and which areas are not. So as you can see right now, the grid is like white and you can see the floor through it. However, as soon as you actually select terrain manipulation, you will see that this turns yellow. Every area that is yellow or like bright yellow is actually flat. So keep this in mind. I will start with the terrain paint part, so we're going to dive into terrain paint first, but with enabling or disabling the grid, you can actually see that when you're on the terrain manipulation part, this has a massive effect on what you see. It's not just the lines, it actually gives you information on what part of the lot is flat and which is not. So like I said, I wanted to start off with the terrain paint. There is also one part of the terrain tool that I'm not covering today, and that is the water tool or the pond tool. This was actually added quite recently, and I will make a separate episode on fountains, pools, and like the water tool or ponds. The reason is because they are all different, and I thought it might be better to actually cover them in one video so you know the difference between the three. So whenever you want to add water to your build, go to that episode. Whenever it's finished, I will actually add a card up top here as well, so you can easy access it if that is what you're looking for. For now, we are just going to look into the paint tool, the eraser tool, which I rarely use because I just press Control on my keyboard, or the terrain manipulation. When you are on the paint menu, you can actually select multiple things on the side here, and then you just select your color or the thing that you want to paint. First and foremost, you can select whether you want a round or a square brush. This literally changes the shape of your brush. So when I select round, it's a round brush, and when I select square, it's a square brush. Then with the slider, you can decide how large you want the brush to be. If you do the largest size, as you can see, I can almost paint the entire lot. And if I do the smallest size, it's literally very, very small. So it's a quarter tile. So you can actually make a lot of difference with this. If you want to paint the entire lot in, let's say, a dirt, then just go ahead, select the dirt and do the entire lot at once. If you want to make more details, then this is the way to go. I prefer to go with the round one, especially when I'm doing landscaping, because that way I have a little bit more control and it looks a little less unnatural because it's straight lines. Do whatever you prefer with this. It's the same as with landscaping. Eventually, you will develop your own style in using the terrain paint, using the terrain tool, etc. Some people never use it and still make beautiful, beautiful builds. Some people use it in every single build and they're like masters of the terrain paint and the terrain tool. Make sure that you do whatever you think is your style in building. Don't feel like you have to use the terrain tool to be a good builder, because you don't. It's simple as that. I didn't use the terrain tool for the first like 1.5 years that I was building, and still I have a lot of pretty builds. Then we have the last cast slider all the way at the bottom, and this kind of adjusts the softness of your brush. However, something that I didn't really understand when I started using this is that it adjusts the initial softness of your brush. What I mean with this is if I set it all the way to here, you can actually see like the middle circle. There's like an outer circle and a middle circle going all the way to the edges. So if I click now, it will immediately create a very dark circle. If I move it all the way to the other side and I click, as you can see, it doesn't do much. However, if I click and I hold, it will actually fill the entire circle. It's still like the edges look a little bit different. It's a little smaller. Just keep in mind that you are able to actually hold and still fill the entire circle. So it's the initial press or like the initial stamp that you change or that you adjust the softness of. It's not like if you have this, you can just hold and drag, because it will actually, the more times you go over a certain area, it will make it darker and darker and darker. Keep this in mind. This is something that I really struggled with in the beginning when trying to do like subtle landscaping, is that if you have the soft brush, you can still make very dark spots. So just practice around with it, play around with it, so that you can get a little bit more familiar with the intensity of how the brush works. Then last but not least, in the Train Paint menu, we have this little menu over here that allows you to select what you want to see in the menu over here. So you have like grass and flowers, so the more natural train paints. We have some stones. I really like to use this one as well, often as like a pathway that goes all the way to the border of the lot, so that way I can have like a nice little pathway leading up to my house. Do make sure that the grass matches in color, because otherwise it looks kind of weird. One really cool thing with the sand, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but this is also the case for all of the World of Oasis Springs, is if you have sand, your sim will actually be able to build sand castles, even with the train paint. So it literally changes the ground. If you use this, your sims will be able to play as if they are on a beach, which is really nice. And that is always what I like to do with the sand, is I like to make like little sandboxes or playpens for my kids in the backyard so that they can make sand castles, which is a very fun activity to do with toddlers as well. Then moving on, we go to the eraser tool. Like I said, I rarely use the eraser tool, because if you hold control on your keyboard while you're in the Train Paint menu, if you hold control and you drag over it, you actually erase what you just did. So I very rarely go to the eraser tool to actually do this, but it's quite literally what it says. If you have a big stain of dirt and you want to get rid of it, you select the eraser tool. You can again adjust the softness, adjust the shape, and you can erase it. So let's say you have a nice patch of dirt. You select the eraser, you want it to be a little bit smaller so you can just change the edges. But like I said, I just hold control and it literally does exactly the same. Whatever makes the most sense to you. It is sometimes convenient to change the characteristics of your eraser as well, so then you can go over here. But for me, it's very often just holding control. If you want to delete your Train Paint altogether, like all at once, you can go up to Bulldoze and then Bulldoze Terrain. This doesn't only get rid of the Train Paint though, it also gets rid of any train manipulation that you've done. But it is very nice if you've been playing around with this, if you've been trying to follow along with this episode, clicking around, and you just want to go back to the neutral position with no train paint, no train manipulation, just do Bulldoze and then the bottom one, so Bulldoze Terrain, because this way you can actually get rid of all of the train manipulation and paint without actually deleting your entire build. So if you've built a nice house but you don't want to get rid of that, just use this one. The other way around, if you want to get rid of the build but you want to keep the train, you can use the top one, Bulldoze Lot. That actually gets rid of the buildings and everything, all the objects that you put on the build. So those are the two different ways to get rid of the train paint. Then we move on to the actual train tool that allows you to manipulate the train that your lot has. This is limited to the current lot that you're playing on, so you will only be able to manipulate the train that is like confined within the lines of your lot. As you can see, the building menu that you see here is very similar to the one that we have in the Train Paint menu. It just has a little extra option. So first you can select whether you want to use a round or a square brush, and you can select how big you want it to be. That is the same as for the Train Paint. Then we have the intensity of the brush as well. As you can see, like the little square in the middle becomes bigger and smaller with me changing the brush. This works the same as with the Train Paint, although it changes not which area you will paint, but it changes the area that you will manipulate in the train and how harsh the edges of your manipulation will be. And then there is a new slider, which is the speed with which you will be able to perform your actions. If you put it all the way to this, it's going to be very sensitive. So as soon as you click, it will like shoot up in the sky. If you put it to very soft, this will give you a lot more control. So what I would highly suggest is if you start using the train tool for the first time, just make sure that your brush is all the way to soft and your speed is all the way down. This way you actually can experiment slowly with what happens with the train. However, it is the same as with the train paint. If you click and hold, it will continue to go up or down. So it is, again, it's the initial click. It's not what you will be able to do in total. It's not like if you set it to a very low speed, you will not be able to go up very high or very low with the train manipulation. It just takes more time, giving you more control over what you are doing. And then there is one last tool or like bar over here, which says flatten to height tool must be selected. This is one of the tools that you can see here on the side. It's actually this one. When you select this, you are able to say that you want your lot to flatten to like the little floating square, like that is the height that it will be set at. You can also, like you see with the description, increase this with Control and then the square bracket keys. So that way you can make it higher and lower. You can also use the height slider to make this higher or lower. If you say, I want to make the entire lot go up like 1, 2, 3, you do 1, 2, 3, and then you actually select, and it will, because the speed and the softness is very slow, adjust everything within that block. And here you can already see it happening as well with the yellow grid. This one square is now flat and everything around it is no longer flat until you come to the yellow squares again. This is important to keep in mind when you're actually building, because some things like fences will be influenced by whether the lot is flat or not. They will actually place in a curve. Also, if there's too much of a curve and it's too steep, your Sims won't be able to walk on it. Stairs will also snap to a certain steepness, but they will not snap to everything. So the yellow grid is very important. It gives you a lot of information on what you will be able to do once you've manipulated the train. If I turn it off, it's actually quite difficult to see whether this is flat or if it's not flat. So if I will be able to place object on top of that little square. So therefore, I highly recommend just turning on the yellow grid. Then I kind of skipped a step there with going straight into one of the tools you have here on the side, but I actually want to show you guys one by one. So the first one is to raise the train. It kind of speaks for itself with the little arrows that the one next to it is lower train, but I still want to show you guys. So raise the train, let's say that I have the square selected, I make it a little less soft and a little faster so I can show you guys a little bit faster. As soon as I click, it goes up quite fast. If I hold it, it continues to go up. And I'm not joking when I say that can go up pretty high. I'm not saying that you should want to do this, but it's a possibility. I don't know what you would use it for, but the possibility is there. However, I can imagine that you don't necessarily want your terrain to go into the air like a full spike. So maybe you're like more looking like this might be a nice height. And then you want to make sure that the train next to it also goes to that height. Then I would highly suggest using flattened terrain. This sounds a little bit scary because it sounds like if you click it, it's going to flatten the entire lot. It doesn't do that, however. It gives you another one of these brackets. As you can see, this bracket is set to whatever you put on the height slider. This one is actually, it moves up with the terrain. So if I do it here, it will flatten this part of the train. If I put it up here, it will flatten everything on that height. However, if I put it here, it will start flattening that one. So make sure that the little square is on the height that you want it. And then you can just start flattening things. And this way you will be able to create maybe like a platform in your build that you can then build your house on top on, and then have some stairs go up against the train tool to actually lead up to the house. Then, as I mentioned earlier, as soon as you have something like this, you might not want all of the weird steep curves in your terrain. It kind of looks unnatural. Maybe you want to have some areas overflow in each other a little bit more. That is when the smooth terrain comes in. As soon as you click this, you will be able to smooth out the terrain. Keep in mind, if you smooth it out, it will also smooth out the areas that you made flat. So I can suggest for smoothing out to actually make sure that you have a very soft brush, that it goes quite slow, that you use the round one so it's a little bit more natural, and make it a little bit smaller. That way you can actually slowly smoothen out whatever you want to smooth out. And you can actually, well, in this case, I'm not really doing it well, but you can prevent getting rid of the flat areas. If you think, hey, but wait, I wanted this to be flat so I can build on it, use the the flatten terrain again, just select it and then go around and make sure that you make it flat again. Then you can select the smooth terrain again, like go around it a little bit. And as you can see, it is me going back and forth between first selecting the correct height, then making sure that it's flat, then trying to smoothen it out, then making it flat again. So using the terrain manipulation tool is not something that you do like placing a wall. You place it once and then you're done. It will require some time for you to play around, to maybe put the house on top of the hill, see if it works, maybe get rid of the house, manipulate the terrain a little bit more, smoothen out the edges, everything. It will take time to play around with this. The more that you do it, however, the better you'll become and the faster you'll actually be able to do this. I remember when I first used the terrain tool, 1, it didn't look good, and 2, it took me like 6 hours. Now when I use the terrain tool, I'm, quite okay with manipulating the entire terrain, coming up with a basic structure for my build, making sure that the terrain around it looks nice in maybe, let's say, 2 hours, depending on how big the lot is. It will make sure that your building takes more time. If you don't use the terrain tool at all, building will be easier. So decide whether you're ready for this, whether you want to dip your toes into the terrain tool. If you want to do it, just start playing around with it. It's literally a lot of fun. I can highly recommend it, and it can definitely take your building to the next level. Then if you want to get rid of all of your terrain, like I said, you can do that. It will get rid of it, but you can also select this one, flatten lot, and that way it will also get rid of all the terrain manipulation, but not the terrain paint. So if you just want to get rid of your terrain manipulation, use flat lot. If you want to use this one to get rid of everything that you did to the terrain, so including the terrain paint, then use the one that says bulldoze terrain all the way up top in your screen. Then to show you guys some last little details that fences actually get manipulated by the terrain tool is if you put it over it, you can see that the fence will automatically follow the curve of the terrain manipulation. So keep this in mind if you are making a beautiful lot and you want to place fences on it. It is actually going to influence whenever you use terrain manipulation how the fences look. That you cannot place a straight fence through the terrain. It will always follow it. However, when you put a wall, it will always go through the terrain. So this is the difference. Like fences will follow the terrain, walls will go straight through. And then if you want to use stairs, stairs will actually very often like snap to the height of the terrain. It has to be completely flat. So the stairs have to have a flat square to snap to. So make sure that you have 1 or 2 flat squares up here, and it will automatically raise the terrain to also make sure that there is a flat square down here. Adding stairs can be like a really, really nice way to make some sort of a custom, like fun pathway up to a house. It will require some practice to be able to know whenever your terrain is high enough to place stairs, because as you can see, it will not always place. Like here, this piece of terrain is not high enough for me to place any stairs, and there is no flat block on the top. So that way I will not be able to place the stairs and will continue to give me the message that it's incompatible with the terrain. However, here it's a little bit higher. Let me actually move over so you can see. It's a little bit higher. The one on top is flat and the terrain is actually able to go flat on the bottom as well. So it can it raises up a little bit. And that way you can actually make custom stairs with the terrain tool. And then a last and very important tip, as you can already see, there is quite a lot of height difference, stairs, etc. And this will influence whether your sim can access a build. So make sure when you're using the terrain tool, and especially when you start adding stairs, fences, walls, etc. with it, make sure to playtest your builds. Make sure that you get a sim on the lot, and whenever you feel like you're done with the terrain manipulation and like the basic layout of your build is there, get a sim on your lot and see if they can walk over to the places that you need them to walk over to. Make sure that they are able to access all of the areas before you actually completely do your build, completely decorate everything, and then realize that you're going to have to go back and change all of the terrain manipulation while the build is already there, because that is a complete pain in the ass. I wouldn't recommend it. That was it on the episode for today. I hope that I covered everything that you guys wanted to know on terrain manipulation and the terrain paint. If you have any questions, however, that I didn't cover, feel free to comment. I will do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. And if you guys have any tips for me, also feel free to drop them in the comments down below. If this video was in any way helpful to you, please give it a big thumbs up so the video gets to more people through the YouTube algorithm. It is free, it is easy, and it's a huge help for me. So please leave a like if this video was helpful to you. And if you want to see more videos like this, don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!